is the President Jimmy Carter. So tell us about the memories you built up from him.
I grew up in Georgia, and Jimmy Carter comes from Georgia. And he's on my mind a lot right now because so many people who follow politics are talking about the influence of Georgia. But it was in 1975 when Jimmy Carter declared himself a candidate to run for president. And when he won, the funny thing is he had a 0% chance to win the presidency, according to all the people who always know everything about elections. So he goes from 0% to winning the election. And he put Georgia on the international map in that way because people were not necessarily thinking about Georgia in the 1970s.
He might be listening to us, so we just extend a greeting to Jimmy Carter. So tell us, Carter is also a symbol of democracy in the story of USA. From Ohio to Georgia, you're mentioning the war. Mm-hmm. So there are short stories to say about him.
But I had the honor of interviewing him in 1989. As a former president, he was very active in his civic life, and he was monitoring the election in Panama. That we journalists had set our places around an oval table with our camera crew and our microphones and all of that essential equipment. And we had left the point of the oval table empty because, of course, the former leader of the free world would sit at the head of the table. But in all of his humility, Jimmy Carter refused to sit at the point of the oval. He sat somewhere along one of the sides of the table. And so for me, that immediately impressed upon me that he did not appear to be so self-absorbed that he would be the center of attention. But it's crazy because we were there to interview him. And as far as Mr. Carter and sports, the world knows that the US athletes did not compete in the 1980 Olympics in Moscow. At the time, it was the Soviet Union. There was a vote held in the US Congress, so both the Congress and the Senate agreed they were not behind the idea of having Americans compete. But Mr. Carter has been lassoed with that decision as though he made the decision. And it's actually not even the decision of the president. The US Olympic Committee decided to not send athletes. But what people don't talk about with Jimmy Carter and the Olympics is that when the Olympic Games were being held in Atlanta, Mr. Carter was invited to reach out to North Korea to help make it possible for a North Korean delegation to come to Atlanta. And he made that happen. And also what people don't talk about with Mr. Carter and the Olympics is that at the 96 Olympics, that is the first time a Palestinian Olympic team competed. And again, Mr. Carter had his hands on sports and equality and opportunity in those ways. And so for me, as I reflect on a Georgian who is a significant part of my country's history, Mr. Carter in that way has been a force for what he calls the equal human treatment of people. His father was a known racist, a known segregationist. And that is how a lot of people, white people in South Georgia lived, in Sumter County and in Plains, Georgia. And so when I think of the heritage and the legacy of what Jimmy Carter has brought to our public conversations, is that someone raised in a home with those types of segregationist thoughts doesn't have to continue those thoughts. Well, when Jimmy Carter goes off to the US Naval Academy and as a nuclear scientist, he's studying nuclear engineering. He goes away from his home environment and interacts with new people and new thoughts. And somehow, as can happen with all of us, we can percolate ideas that are more inclusive when we have other types of ideas coming in, instead of when a person stays in one environment. And for me, that is one of the legacies of Jimmy Carter, because he comes from a farming family, comes from a family that was comfortable economically, but a family that did have, like many in Georgia, did have racist and separatist ideas. But he grew into a person who brought sides together. So that's part of the to answer that question that you put on the table, that's part of the heritage, part of the legacy of Mr. Carter, born in 1924. Well, the role of Georgia now,
does it have a link with Jimmy Carter as president?
There is so much that has changed in Georgia and in the United States from the time of Mr. Carter's presidency, well, inaugurated in 1977, leaving office in 1981. So the link between Jimmy Carter and his prominence as governor and then as president is still present today. He had partnership with other people who were working toward some of what we're pushing for today. He actually talked about healthcare in the 1970s. He talked about equal opportunity on the job in the 1970s, which were not common topics from a lot of politicians. And so his presence is still very active, because the policies that he talked about are the policies people still push for now.
I want to thank you, and also take our readers, our listeners, follow us also to the book you have written, Civil Rights Baby.
Thank you. I'll see you next time.